Now at 6 o'clock, we will start the work session of October 26, 2023. If everybody please rise and face the flag, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Councilmember Howe?
Present.
Councilmember Hyman?
Present.
Councilmember Jackson?
Here.
Councilmember Work?
Here.
Councilmember Wright? Here. Vice Mayor Whipple?
Here.
Mayor Malpajoe?
Here. Discussion of items. A, property next to the Robinson Grand Performing Arts Center. The owners of that property are interested in selling it, and I've asked Ian to come and give his take on that. I mean, are we interested in or not interested? Go up to the podium.
I would say at this time, I'm non-committal on any of it. I don't know enough information about costs or how much money would be there to develop land in the future. I could see why the city would want to own the land that's right next to the Robinson Grand. It's a massive investment. So I could see why you would want to protect that outskirts of it. But I don't really know at this point. Is probably
I
the
apologize.
answer.
I was under the understanding that you had been.
No, so what just to give a little bit of information on the sheet here for grants, I have talked to our grant manager to look for a way of getting some grant funding if we could get that piece of land to perhaps have the RG as an emergency shelter, or find some sort of way to integrate a plan in regards to grant funding for that. We're still in the initial stages. I did talk to Ian briefly, and he said that basically what he said here tonight, if it is nice to own land or parking around the RG, because we would like to have our own parking, but it has to be done in the confines of our ordinances in regards to the price that is being offered on that land, because we can't pay more than the assessed value. So that's what
Is it appraised?
appraised value. So Brittany's in the initial stages of looking for that, but we do want to see what council's thoughts are. We've done some work, but want to see what council's thoughts are if we would like to continue to pursue that, to see if there's grant funding available. Do we see value in seeing if we can own a lot for parking next to the RG, because it is right in the core of downtown?
Do you know the price that the owners are asking?
No, I haven't been in contact with.
Do you know the ballpark?
Ballpark, I believe, is right about 200,000, based on the conversation that I had a little earlier with Captain. And I think basically, to have that piece of property, I didn't understand from the get-go when they put the Robinson Grand back together why we didn't buy more property up the block. But it was explained, I guess, that other little building, Liberty, is owned maybe by the VFW, who didn't want to part with it. So, that right there is the only thing that's available. And I think more could be done with that piece of property than just put parking in. Looking at expansion outward. We have people coming in to the city all the time for shows and things. As soon as that show's over, they're jumping their cars and they're out in Clarksburg. We need to do a little something that we can add on to try to keep people in the city of Clarksburg after these shows.
I mean, I think a lot of people over the years have criticized the amount we've spent on the Robinson Grand. I think it's not good strategic planning of us to not continue to spend more money around it, because of like what Mark was saying. We want people to come in, not just go to Robinson Grand, but we want to keep them staying there and eating there and all those other things. We got to have a 30,000 feet view, at least of that area of the downtown, have some kind of developmental plan. whether it's a cultural district, a little small mini section. I've heard some people talk about that. But I agree with everything Mark said. We need to be looking at it at a review.
What's the appraised value at the moment? Nobody knows.
The appraised value is not near what they're
I can
asking
imagine.
for the land.
Well, you don't have the appraisal.
Well,
You're saying assessed value.
the assessed value, yes.
Yeah.
Which is not much of it, right? Yeah. I think we should explore it. I mean, I think you have all means the ability to go forward, explore it, put together a plan,
proposal.
yeah, for us and
Okay.
look at it. I mean,
But I think we need to have everybody that has stake in down there. Brandon, Rich, about the building across from it, he needs to be a part of these meetings. Even the church to an extent, because it's their parking lot. I mean, everybody around that area. Antonio, with Ritzy, I think that he owns the whole block down, like even the H&R block.
He does.
He does. You know, I mean, I think there's a lot of, like everybody's got to be involved in, I think, some kind of strategic planning with everybody. The library board.
Well, and that's more of a holistic approach to that area, which is great. But this specific piece of land, I think we can do that for sure. But if this piece of land, if council thinks there's some value to looking into that, I can continue to move forward and investigate that. I do know there is some boundaries we have to stay in regards to purchasing land. And that will pretty much determine if we can even go forward.
I mean, the value is also determined by a plan by us. If we see a bigger plan, then that has more value to
No,
us.
we're actually not allowed to buy it. Like once outside of, I believe it's the appraised value. Like we can't just say,
Oh,
well,
I meant, yeah, I'm not saying actual value. I'm talking
Oh,
about, yeah,
okay.
yeah. But that's, I'm in favor of it.
We looked at that property, what was it that guy wanted for that house?
it went up a certain amount. I can't remember what
About 400,000.
it was. Yeah.
It was close. I think it was 235 or.
Yeah, we had a use for the house, but at the time, we just didn't want to
Cost prohibitive.
Yeah.
well, and I know, like I said, I've been working with Brittany to see if there's some sort of way we can fashion a project and have a grant attached to it, because that may change the parameters that we can actually pay for the land. So we are looking at that, and when we figure that out, I can come back to council and update everybody.
And the other thing is too, I think it's right smack dab in the middle of the TIF. So, I mean, I think it's worth exploring, investigating. And I guess we'll later down on the agenda, we talk more about the TIF, but, you know, it's definitely in a prime area for development. I mean, what better place to build around, you know, start building around or building your city around than, you know, your crown jewel of your city, you know, Robinson Grand. So I think it's worth investigating. So.
Okay.
Well, I have to say, Ian, you and Jason are doing an exemplary job, and, you know, it's, you guys are gone above and beyond.
Thank you.
Keep up the good work, and we appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Great presentation.
Wasn't very good, sorry.
Well, that was my fault.
We like him
I
short.
thought I thought he had been in contact with the owners, so.
I haven't been in contact with the others.
Well, we know.
Actual, so.
That was good.
Grants update?
So, Councillor Wright had asked, I blanked out there for a second, for a grants update. So we created a new spreadsheet. It's kind of small, but I sent it out to all of council to review as well. It outlines what we're currently working on, what's been awarded, and what's been denied. So council had a chance to review these. I was wondering if council had any questions for Brittany.
Yeah, I do
If
have
you
a
could
question
come
for-
forward, Brittany? Thank you. And going forward, I will be sending out this document to council on a monthly basis. And then in the email, it will outline if there's any new updates to it. So then all of council is going to have up-to-date information on our grants that have been awarded, in progress, or that are denied.
No, no.
Counselor Jackson.
I was looking at the rehabilitation and replacement of Clarksburg bridges. Um, Didn't the state, I was under the impression that the state had agreed to replace those. What are we doing with the additional 3 million that we requested?
Yeah, so that project was originally submitted, I think, through a CDS request in fiscal year 2023, and it was denied. And then it was recycled or revamped, revised from a debrief from, the notes from the funder from that round, and then it was recycled into a US DOT federal application for the BIP project, which is the the bridge improvement project or program rather. And that was denied because they ended up funding a lot of larger cities, like Seattle was a recipient. So there was no, oftentimes federal grants will have what they call a rural set aside. And it's a, certain amount of funding, like a percentage that goes to rural communities under a certain population amount. However, the BIP did not have that. So it made our proposal, which is a really competitive program. Anyway, so then we did receive the state funding through the IIGA. So that is a formula grant essentially. So it's kind of actually to assist, communities that may not have received some of the funding that was set aside from the federal government for bridge improvements. So that's for approximately 3 million. It's essentially set up so we do the work as the funding is released. So essentially we won't exactly know the dollar amount until we have, until we're working in coordination with them. And Tom might have some more notes on that project itself, but we are expected to receive approximately 3 million for the same project that has been recycled throughout a couple different grants or 2 fiscal years now. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
So when you say awarded, it doesn't mean we've actually received the funds.
We will.
We will receive them,
yeah,
but we
so-
haven't physically received them.
Sometimes grants are set up in a way that they're like a reimbursement process.
yeah.
And this one would probably more so be in that kind of handled in that process because it's a formula grant.
Okay. Could you add a column maybe that
Sure.
tells that or lets us know
Sure.
if it works that way or if it's just
Okay.
straight cash?
We'll have a detail column,
Yeah.
to the end,
Or
and,
just,
and make
other
it smaller.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or
we
you
will
mean
for
like-
sure do that.
Okay.
There's actually a few more columns on the document we sent out over email. It's just, I can't fit them on a page.
than- Okay, thank you.
Sure.
So some of these grants that are denied, do they give you like a rationale why they were denied?
Yeah, so typically I go through a process, like once something's denied, I'll have like a debrief, basically a conversation with the funder. Sometimes like the federal funders actually have to provide you the review notes per project, and so those generally are accessible. Sometimes I use like a scoring rubric, so you can see basically there's a lot, some transparency there of where you might, increase your score. So if you notice like on the denied proposals, they've generally all been recycled, for the next fiscal year into another proposal with those notes considered. And
So if they are denied, we could reapply for them.
yeah, and we have been. So generally, that's what I'll
Are we
do.
planning to reapply for the Clarksburg Fire Department needs?
Yes.
It's like $683,000. Because they have a lot of air packs that they need replaced.
Yes, and
20 years
actually,
old.
I was gonna note that just today, I actually had a call finally that came back from FEMA that was for the AFG grant, Assistance to Firefighters grant, and that actually is still in review. I would just assume that it was denied because I had found a list of projects that were, it was published on the FEMA website, but they're actually not done recycling or reviewing those.
So this one is still under review then, so we still have a shot at it.
Yes,
So we will
for
move
the
that.
for the AFG, that was actually a note I had here. And aside from that, I just wanted to say that the Robinson Grant project that the city manager brought to my attention, that is listed on that Excel under like in planning and development. After talking to FEMA, they do have limited funding available for a generator just because they more so consider that more of a capital expenditure. That doesn't quite roll them out as a potential funder because there's like the public assistance grant program, other than the Homeland Security grant. There's some other funding streams. But mainly, I think the best avenue for that funding may be through the state, through the West Virginia Department of Arts, Culture, and History. They have a cultural facilities and capital resources grant program, and you can actually receive in total up to $750,000. But generally, the grants are awarded maybe not more than $500,000, but it does require 50% match. So that is something that, again, is meant for arts organizations specifically. City, governments are able to apply. Sometimes the Robinson Grant, unfortunately, even though they sort of function as a nonprofit, they might have some funding that's rolled out for them. And sometimes, like this fund, it's actually a benefit to them that where the city acts more of like a fiscal sponsor. So that would be a really good, again, resource or opportunity for, a facilities grant. So parking lot, and because it's all under one project site, we could maybe do something beyond the parking lot, depending on what the price that comes in at once we get the estimates for the parking lot, if that's what the Robinson Grant or the council wants to prioritize for that location.
Is there a specific type of generator we're looking for that?
We were trying to come up with creative ideas on a grant that we could apply for. So we haven't come up with a specific type of generator, but the cost to a generator to power that for an emergency is actually quite expensive.
To power it 100%?
To power it enough to put people in there for an emergency shelter.
You're going to run into an issue. Because that was actually spec'd out to do. The gas supply, you're not going to have the gas supply you need to run a generator there for the full capacity.
Okay.
So you might want to check with Dominion, make sure they have the pressure.
Okay.
In 2016, 17, they did not have the pressure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other council people have questions for Brittany?
Yeah, I was just curious, on the fire department needs, did we receive a grant earlier this year for some equipment for the fire department?
Recently, as far as like in between the last meeting and this meeting, we had a couple of awards. So one was the DOJ JAG grant, which is for e-bikes, which will benefit the police department. And then also we have a FEMA Homeland Security grant that was funded partially. I think the original amount was submitted like over 200,000. So we received 60,000 for an award for mobile and portable radios. And that just actually was released like last week. So we're going through
So
the
I think
next steps.
Councillor Jackson, are you asking about, we received an email saying we can't spend any money on a certain project until 2024 because of a grant. Which one was that?
Yeah, so on that Excel, that would be under appropriations, and that's listed as the HRSA account. So it's the Clarksburg Fire Department Public Safety Needs. So that was submitted for ambulance, SCBA, and portable and mobile radios, which of course that piece of that was funded through another grant.
That's
But
the one
yeah,
I
so that's
told
through
you
the
guys about.
appropriations
Yeah.
request. So we submitted 4 projects in total through like fiscal year 2024, and 3 out of the 4 were like supported by our legislators, either Senator Manchin or Senator Capito or both. And the last update we received on that was on the 17th of October. So our projects were supported and were included in the bill, but it still is awaiting congressional action. So the offices will keep us updated on the progress, but we wouldn't expect to have that funding in hand if they, ultimately, if we do receive the funding, until next year, because it is fiscal year 2024.
And just one last question. On the Clarksburg and Harrison County Enhanced Response Project, can you tell the people who may be watching what that grant is about?
Yeah, sorry, could you tell me one more, which grant?
It's the Clarksburg and Harrison County Enhanced Response Grant.
Okay, so that's the JAG grant, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's through the Department of Justice. Ultimately, that's also kind of like a formula grant. But our proposal was submitted for e-bikes, and we will receive that funding, and we will be purchasing, I believe, 2 e-bikes for Clarksburg and 2 for Harrison County for patrol, and it's mainly focused on areas in the community in which like vehicular access isn't really conducive to responding.
And we were required for that grant to split it with the Harrison County Sheriff's Department.
So we will split that. 50% goes to the county and 50% for the police department.
Anything else? Thank you, Chris.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Chief, you remember riding that bike? Were you and Sheriff continuing racing those bikes down Main Street?
Funding.
Let's move on to C, residential development plan.
Councilman Worth, who wanted to just speak about this.
Yes, I'm just going to be really brief on this. I feel like, we lose a lot of population every time I drive out towards, Pete Dye and Bridgeport Country Club. I see townhomes just flying up. And I believe that we have tools. We have a comprehensive plan that talks a lot about planned unit developments. Even the old comprehensive plan back from 2011 talks about planned unit developments. We now have a land bank where we have an opportunity to, to purchase properties that, right of first refusal after a tax sale through the auditor's office for the back taxes. We have, through that, we have, side lots. Now I know you can't build, something, another structure on a lot that was just demoed, but there's lots in this city that are double side lots that I think that are prime for development. So I really want to have a few questions on this, and I'll just direct them to the city manager. Is this something that you and staff are going to prioritize, try to, increase our opportunities to, to investors to build planned unit developments here, so we could have some sort of population growth, and the thing is, if that is a plan, when will you all be giving us like updates on that?
So that is the plan. So I've gone through the comprehensive plan. I've pulled out all the action items and are meeting with the senior leadership team to assign them all out. So we're working through that document now. And in regards to the land bank, we actually met today about the land bank, and we are going to be acquiring and rolling a whole load of lots and homes into the land bank, and that will be done by the end of November. And once all those properties are in there, I plan to go through with staff, identify which pieces are good to, because neighboring units have first right of refusal.
Right.
When you have 3, 4, 5 lots side by side, those are great for bigger units like townhomes. So once all those lots are in there, we'll be working through that as well, and we'll provide an update shortly after we do that. I also will provide an update once we're done with the tax sale, which happens in November. So all of this is happening basically right now because of the timeline of the tax sale. So the land bank is moving forward, and so is the residential planning that comes after it.
Okay, that's good. And will there be sort of a marketing strategy too, once we put properties in the land bank to try to market some of these to investors that may want to.
Yes, so we will be working on a plan to showcase to the community and developers what we have available, what's our ideas for it. I actually was talking today in that meeting. I was saying, is there a way where we can fashion, when we have these, let's say you have 4 lots side by side, that we can require through the land bank that they be developed within a certain amount of time, that they have to actually submit a plan and we can hold them to that plan. So people aren't just buying the lots and letting them get overgrown and dilapidated again, because that doesn't really serve the purpose of the land bank. So all that is happening.
That's the answer to my question. Thank you.
Councilman Howe, when was the quarry, when did that project start? What year was that?
I can't remember. That was late 90s, I thought.
Late 90s?
Is that about right, Johnny? 90s?
So I was just wondering, that's the last kind of bigger development we kind of made. It was an annex. I was wondering the process and what we can learn from that one. Then maybe there was those homes that were built over by Laurel Lanes. So I don't know what we can come from those two things, but maybe there's a strategy out of one of those. I thought maybe you were there.
For planned unit development.
Well, they also put in those apartments down in Monticello, right there across from the park. They took a couple of houses. It might not even have been houses. I think that might have been just a yard that belonged to a family, and then a property up the top. But they put a few houses in up there, apartments. So
Yeah, it was in partnership with Clarksburg Harrison Housing Authority. I think,
right.
two of them on them, I think. But yeah, those kinds of things, I think, really make an impact.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff happening right now with the planning, and you'll see a lot of information coming forward to council in the next few months as well.
Fantastic.
Any other questions?
So are we still purchasing then demos that have been completed on the tax sales?
So I've asked staff to we had 3 different lists today. We had a list of ones that we could take over right away. And then there's a list of ones that potentially could be put into the land bank, but they're owned by not the city, they're owned by individuals somewhere that are potential. And then we're getting the list after November 1st from, is it the auditors?
Yes.
The auditors for tax sales. So we're planning to do all 3 of those and identify tax sale lots and homes as well that we believe should be in the land bank. And then moving forward with a plan once we have those all completed.
Okay. So some properties you're purchasing for the land bank have a structure on it?
Some of them actually do. Even the ones on the list that we own, apparently some of them still have structures, but I've been told we're supposed to be getting a demo grant very soon. So those will be prioritized if we own it to take those down right away.
Anyone else? Next, D, TIF development plan within the TIF boundaries and development plan when utilizing TIF funds.
And this is just me going to regurgitate some of the same questions, but this in a different format. We have a tax increment finance district, that encompasses a lot of, downtown and around the Robinson Grand and some of Glen Elk. And my question was, because at the last meeting, a couple meetings ago, we seemed to we got a check for $211,000 or something that we make from that TIF. Notoriously, TIFs, are used for, moving land and developing utilities, for economic development. And a lot of the personal property taxes are frozen, at the whatever assessed value of what the property is at that time, and for a certain amount of years, the taxes that usually go into that go back into the TIF, and they speed up economic development. What I've seen, I guess, you know, over the last maybe, you know, 2 or 4 years, whatever, that some of these TIF funds, I guess, are being used for like demos, you know, on just properties within the TIF zone with no real redevelopment plan. And we were just talking about the property next to the Robinson Grand, you know, if that does eventually come to fruition, if, having a plan, a pot of money, you know, in that TIF and a plan going forward with that could really enhance some of the properties that we may purchase around the Robinson Grand or within the TIF district. So my question is, one, how are we using our TIF dollars now? And two, if we are going to be demoing properties in the TIF zone with TIF funding, TIF money, is there some sort of redevelopment plan for those?
So right now, I don't think there's any redevelopment plan in the
Okay.
city. That's something we can look at creating. For the TIF funding, I think that's probably a question I could ask Kim how it works right now, and then we can look at creating that plan for that area going forward.
I mean, if it's a priority, if it's something that, you feel, the city feels is a priority to utilize those TIF dollars for the most bang for our buck. I mean, if you look at Charles Point and White Oaks, I mean, they definitely, and of course that's a bigger TIF, a lot bigger TIF, but they utilize a lot of their TIF dollars to expand projects out there. And it seems to work. I mean, although they had a little bit of financial trouble and they had to extend it, I think we're kind of more as a pay-as-you-go TIF, which that's what I pretty much believe. So I still believe that we could, those funds should be utilized for that particular area, for a lot of these economic development, ideas and plans that we may have, especially in that certain area.
When does our downtown tip expire?
I can get you that information, that answer.
Because I saw this a couple years ago. I mentioned it before. But so Wheeling in 2020, they combined two TIF districts, which expired or expanded it and gave them so many more options. I think they're one of the first cities in the state to do it. I would want us to look into that, see how they did it. And I know we talked at one time, there was a thought about a second TIF district over by Plymouth number 2. I saw it in agenda item a couple years ago, maybe like 2017. I don't know whatever happened to it. I saw it came onto an agenda, but I don't think it ever passed or.
It was over by the Public Works that wrapped back around Ohio Avenue, and that developer just ended up backing out. That's the units that went bankrupt, and the banks took back and resold.
So it would have been a good project that they would back out, or I mean, so we could.
The idea was good. The project, if it was implemented, could have been good. But yeah.
So maybe that's something we could revisit. We're talking about, new development.
Well, that was a developer-driven TIF, not a city-driven TIF.
Okay.
Madam City Manager, for people who may be watching, would you just explain to them how the TIF actually works so that they're aware of what this is all about?
So I'm relatively new to TIFs, so I would actually ask John Whitmore to come and explain, or Kim, one of the two, because I don't want to give out any wrong information. I've been doing a lot of research, but I definitely don't want to give out the wrong information to the public.
Kim can give you the direct financials related to the Clarksburg Tax Increment Financing District. It's just like any other special taxing district now I want to make sure I get this correct too. The monies that are going into it are monies that are being diverted from property tax, if that's correct. Yeah. So it's going into a separate account. Generally, these would go directly into your general fund. They go into the TIF fund. The TIF fund specifically, when it was created, you received an approval based on you're going to be doing certain things with this money. And really, that process was kind of lax at the time, and the state ended up having some problems with TIFs related to Walmart development as opposed to real, I guess, something bigger than just big box stores. So that's the general idea. You have your property tax monies coming into this special fund. You're going to have those properties are going to be just assessed at a certain rate. The rate is not going to change over the period of the TIF. Any of the improvements that are going on to the property, you're going to have there would be assessed value changes. They're not necessarily going to have to pay those assessed values until the end of the TIF. And there's a benefit to the developer in this case. You're able to ensure you have capital flow coming year over year. You're able to better assure what that's going to be, especially when you're putting improvements in. It can be kind of a problem when you're trying to keep development costs low and never pay extra taxes on something you've just done. So that's the general basis. They're tricky in regard, any special taxing district is tricky. You've created a zone where certain special rules apply. In this case, you're able to utilize these funds on improvements. You could utilize them for demolition, but you can also utilize them for infrastructure in the public right-of-way. With regards to the current TIF, we've used it as a basis for match grants for transportation alternative projects related to sidewalk improvements in Glen Elk. They can fail when there isn't investment going into the area. You've been sustained by activity, but there definitely could be some additional improvements going on to really boost the TIF's effectiveness. Because it is, what Clarksburg's TIF is an outlier, as many TIFs wouldn't have beneficial funds to be able to do this.
What area does our TIF cover?
So that's a question that I've had a little bit of difficulty answering. We have information from the assessor's office. The general outline of the TIF district doesn't have like surveyor marker precision. It definitely covers portions of the downtown area, central business district, and most all Glen Elk. The actual property maps, I would have to defer to Kim on that one, and I'd be setting her up because I've seen the maps, and it's something we need to work on with the assessor to make sure the correct district is being shown. And in the future, we can definitely have ordinance showing the meets and bounds of that district a little bit better. I don't know if Kim has anything to add.
Well, I did bring the numbers of how much we've received from the TIF since it began and what we spent. We received about 3.4 million, and we spent 1.6, so we have 1.8 remaining. We spent about 774,000 on demolition in the last 10 years, and almost 700,000 on million paving, and those are the biggest expenditures. We did a little bit of beautification, only 4,000. Some sidewalks in Glen Elk, about 28,000. The East End Fire Station roof, about 26,000. But the majority was the demolition and the paving. Of course, all the money did come from the property taxes, like John said. A little bit of interest, about 50,000 in interest.
So we have 1.8 in the. Thank you, Kim. Anyone else have questions?
We do have one of the largest districts in the state, because we go from Menards to Adamston Flat. And, there was a windfall there with the development of that brownfield project, some others. So, but I would caution in that application, the uses are determined that what we applied for and what can be allocated for. So just make sure you follow the use clause in the application.
Anyone else? Thank you, Mr. Whitmore. Thank you, Kim. E, allocation when received of opioid settlement money. Ms. Bell, would you like to expound on that, please?
Yes, so I got this request, I believe, from Councillor Jackson for this to be on the agenda. So there's an anticipated $1 billion to be collected. The current formula for disbursement to local governments is 24.5% of that $1 billion. This leaves 245 million for county, city, towns, and villages to utilize. As it stands right now, the city of Clarksburg has a 1.1365% share, which equates to 2.7, just over $2.7 million, which will be allocated funds to the city. There is a board or a group that has been appointed by the government to represent 11 counties that make up Region 4, and our representative is Doris Stutler, and they will get their own pot of money as well. So this money, they haven't given a specific date of when we're supposed to get it, but I do agree with Councillor Jackson that we need to have a discussion on how we would like or some ideas for plans on that money. I sent out the documents to council. There is a whole bunch of criteria on things you can actually use the funding for. So we have to stay within those parameters. Wanted to hear council's thoughts. I have some of my own. I do think council has brought up a social worker a few times. I think that is a very fair request. I would also like to see a portion of this money go towards enhancing our police force. And then I would like to, when we create the health and wellness committee, I believe a portion of that should be working towards some sort of a facility to help those who are unhoused or have substance abuse issues, to have some sort of a program and work in conjunction with the county and the surrounding communities to address those issues in our county and in our city. So that's kind of my surface thoughts on where we should spend that money, and it shouldn't be obviously all up front. Like the influx into the police department that I believe we should do, I think should be phased over 3 to 5 years so we can increase our business base. So when that funding isn't there anymore, we've increased our economic development in the city, that our budget will then cover that difference that we've used for 3 to 5 years. I think we're losing, unfortunately, we've lost some police officers, and the biggest reason we're losing, in my opinion, is the wage. It's just not standard with other communities, and I think we do need to bump that up to be in line with the surrounding communities to keep our police officers. So those are my thoughts, and I want to hear what council thinks and any other suggestions from council, and I will work with our police department and other department heads to come up with a plan to present to council, so we are prepared when this money comes in. And again, this money is going to go into a dedicated account, and it can only be spent on those initiatives that are laid out. We can't be borrowing from Peter to pay Paul from our accounts that perhaps have happened in the past. We have to be accountable to the public and transparent in where the funding is going.
Let me ask you this, is the money allowed to be allocated to fire department? Because they're actually the ones that a lot of times respond to overdose calls.
I believe there's something in there for emergency services as well.
Just
So we
something
can
else
look
to
at,
think about.
yeah.
I also support, allocating towards the police 100%, but that is another department that deals with, the drug issues.
Yeah, and I actually would imagine that the social worker would go out on calls with both departments as well.
Is there any opportunities, or have you spoken to Doris Stutler about plans, and is there almost like a matching type of projects that we can look into as well, match with them, being our region?
I haven't spoken to Dory yet, but from the research I've done, we're being pretty proactive to start discussing this already. With the health and wellness committee that we want to create, we wanted to bring in stakeholders from a number of different groups as well to have these discussions, and the school division would be one of them.
So Region 4, how big is that?
That was in the all those attachments that I sent out to council. But there's like 45 of them. So it's like there's 45 attachments. It's a lot of information. So I can, if you want me to send out what Region 4 actually is, I can send that out to you tomorrow and send you the map, so there's an understanding of that map.
I just, sometimes when they break down these maps from a bigger level, money's going to areas that have not been hit. It's hard. We are
And I think that's
it's
why,
not allocated right, or, you know, in this county, Clarksburg's hit the
Right.
hardest.
and I think that's why they are giving funds to the county and funds to the city. They're doing both, simply because they want to make sure that everybody has some resources.
And also about 70% of that $1 billion is going into the West Virginia, what they call West Virginia First, which is going to be like an endowment where people could apply for money, grants to combat a lot of this stuff too. So there's
Programs, yeah.
programs and stuff. So there's, I mean, it's a big deal.
Well, and I think that's why I commend council for wanting to do this, supporting this health and wellness committee, because it'll be a lot easier to move forward with programs when you already have an idea of what you want to do and it's evidence-based, and council is ready to move forward when those funds are released.
And see, speaking on the health and wellness committee, I think this is a great segue into starting the health and wellness committee, because there are guidelines, you know, how you use the money and that sort of thing. And I can remember, you know, prior to being on council, we had a public safety task force. It was kind of like a committee that you know, that we had, and we had probably about 13 people on that, and we took 15 ideas about public safety and we narrowed it down to 5. We made 5 recommendations to council, and they used 2. I believe that this committee could also serve on that. You have people that understand social services, you know, and can say, okay, well, my craft's in this. Someone understands law enforcement, that's their craft, you know, on public safety, whatever. You bring all those folks together in this health and wellness committee to look at all these strategies, and then I believe that, you know, over time they could develop, you know, 5 or 10 recommendations to us. That way, it's just not us 7 politicians up here making a decision on how we're trying to brainstorm how we're going to spend this money. So I do think that going forward, you know, that should at least initially be the plan. Is how much we're going to utilize this health and wellness committee, and how, and you know, and who are we going to target to pick to be on this health and wellness committee that would be congruent with, you know, what these guidelines are, you know, especially when it comes to their profession.
And I think it's also important that, you know, we partner up with the county, because, you know, in order to make the dollars go as far as we possibly can, basically, we're right inside the county. We're right here across from the county seat. So, you know, let's make these dollars stretch as far as we possibly can. And let's make sure that, you know, we're all working together and putting something together, because the county's going to have to put a plan together as well. You know, we've got the health department right down the street right here. We've got health access right over here. I've spoken with the library, and the library's interested in doing something. There are a lot of people who are already interested in doing things. So it's a matter of bringing individuals to the table who already, and some of these entities already have their own pots of money. So, you know, just, you know, being able to put it together, frame it up, and then, you know, move forward with it. But one thing that we want to keep in mind that is important to me is, let's make sure we don't forget about the wellness part of this. You know, we don't want to just reach out, you know, and make sure we're reaching out to, you know, people who are struggling with substances. But, you know, we want to try to get people back into our downtown area. We want people to come back and walk downtown, make it feel safe again. You know, use Jackson Square for, you know, a yoga place in the evenings when there's nothing going on there, Zumba, whatever it is, you know, so we can bring people back into downtown. Because I feel like once we start getting that foot traffic back into downtown, then businesses may want to come back into downtown and reopen.
I also feel very strongly that whatever recommendations come out of whichever committee, there needs to be robust public communication on those plans, because the public needs to have an input as well, because the residents have to, and businesses have to have a say of what's happening in their city.
Anyone else? Okay, we'll move on to F, MS4.
So last council meeting, our council had a presentation on MS4. we've moved forward with, I've asked Mr. Stranko to write up an ordinance and just wanted to know, this is basically for discussion or questions from council on moving forward with MS4. And there's a couple of questions that have to be answered. Do we move forward with just the city of Clarksburg? Do we move forward with anybody that's on the actual system, because that expands outside of the city of Clarksburg? One councilor also suggested that we come with a phased approach for the monthly fee. However, and I understand the idea behind that is very limiting though. We have a lot of projects. Our idea is a flat rate per residential home. Outside of the residential home, there you can do an impervious surface calculation. My suggestion is to make it a little more simple for any properties outside of residential homes. We do have to do the impervious surface calculation, but we would have a range. So from a 0 to 3,000 square feet, from 3,000 square feet to 7,000 square feet, and whatever they fit, they would be charged that flat rate instead of charging a calculation for each place all the time. So that would be my suggestion on how to move forward. Mr. Stranko will be in the next council meeting with the ordinance, or the council meeting after that with the ordinance. This has to be passed through council, but just wanted to have some more conversation. I know this is not an easy one for council to have. Unfortunately, this needs to be done. We're the only ones right now that in this MS4 designated area that haven't moved forward with this.
So my question is, the folks that are gonna pay, this rain tax, whatever you wanna call it, are they just, I don't think it's fair just to say, okay, it's just city residents have to pay for it. Anyone that's using the system.
That was that's why I asked the question. Like, council has the option to just do the city of Clarksburg.
Anything that's going in from any place that's going in our wastewater treatment plant.
Within that radius that is set out, which I believe is 20 miles, can be assigned that fee for service. And I want to know what the general consensus is of council on which model you would like to move forward with.
So earlier I asked Tiffany if we could have some type of phase in. That way we're not dropping $6 or $7, I think was the estimated fee per month.
Now keep in mind that was only if we did the city of Clarksburg.
So it would go down if we would expand?
Yes.
I'm not, of course, I'd like to see it, like Wayne mentioned, anybody who uses our system would be forced to pay for it. But again, I'd still like to see some type of phase-in thing. That way we're not just dumping it all onto the people who would have to pay it in one giant
phased approach.
I also asked earlier if there would be some way where we could use some of the remaining ARPA funds to insert into a new MS4 fund that would go to infrastructure development projects along MS4. However, I was told we couldn't do that by Tiffany. However, in the discussion that we had about the TIF district and there being $1.8 million in the TIF district, are there projects in the TIF district that we could throw that money at, like right now? That seems like we're not using it right.
So
if we're not using it for the sewer or wastewater infrastructure. That's what it's there for, right?
Why?
That's what they use to expand services in White Oaks and Charles Point, correct?
I have to look at what the parameters of the TIF is to see what we can use them, what we can not.
Because we're trying to literally raise $1.5 million. It seems like $1.8 million would go a long way to this, these projects that need to be done, and that would alleviate a lot of this burden that we'd have to pass on to our users initially. Now, it's not going to go away. Obviously, we're still going to have to improve projects down the road and improve our system. But it seems like
I think if you
may have the funds to kind of like lessen the burden on people who.
Maybe if it falls into the area, but again, from what Mr. Stranko has told me, you can't take funds from anywhere else and put them into MS4. It's a fee for service that you have to charge for. So the idea that we could pull from somewhere else doesn't really work.
Right now, though, however, funds from the sanitary fund are being used to separate stormwater from
Which should have never
from
happened.
sewage. But however, I mean, that's how it's been done until obviously we implement this program. So it seems like there's a better solution, at least at the moment, with the funds that we have in this TIF district. That is, I mean, that's what, from what I understand, that's what the money's there for. So if we can kind of like go after these projects that are in this district to alleviate some of the costs from the MS4 projects down the road, I don't know, maybe Tom or somebody can answer it, or Mr. Stranko when we see him next, but I'm just trying to lessen the burden on the people who are going to have to pay this fee, and it's going to be difficult for people who are on fixed incomes. Obviously, it's going to be, I think landlords, people who own property in the city are going to pay the most of it. If they own several units and they all pay the sewage, they're going to get hit with a hefty bill. I don't know, just trying to lessen the burden, as I'm saying.
I mean, businesses are gonna be affected by it too.
Well,
Look
absolutely.
how much rainwater collects on a side, on a parking lot, for crying out loud. I mean, it is tough. I mean, we're, like I said last time, we're pretty much, with our infrastructure costs, we're at the fiscal cliff right now. I could go back and say, I wish, sewer rates were MS4 was here a long time ago, and those rates were raised to the rate of inflation every year, but they weren't.
And we've
I'm
done
not
that.
blaming anybody. We're tagged, we're in. So
I mean, we've done that and since I've been here. We've raised the residential rates in the city and the rates outside of the city, correct, Drew? I mean, I think in 2021, we raised it 50%. That was, of course, we were at the same time, we were talking about fire fees, and, I think we did it, we passed it. Obviously, we just passed the out of the city rates and rate increase. So, I mean, I don't know. And here we are, we're gonna tackle on another bill that, it's already inflammatory. Obviously, people are not pleased when you approach them with the idea of the thing itself. So, I mean, I think
We can look at a 3-year phased
Yeah.
approach to make the burden a little
well,
lighter.
and my idea of possibly using these TIF funds is, if we identify projects that need to be fixed that will ultimately be fixed by MS4 by the funds we raise from MS4 in the next several years, we could avoid having to use that funds that we raise, so we can kind of make it less. You know what I'm saying? I mean, am I making it clear?
It does make sense, but I think if we're going to use funds that, in my opinion, I think TIF funds, from the research I've done, a lot of times they're for economic development, more in that stream. And
If we don't fix what we got, we're not gonna have.
I'm concerned that if we use all of those funds to do these type of projects, we're kind of perpetuating what we've been doing for the last 14, 18 years. And that's
I understand. I mean,
why we're
it
in the
allows us to do both at once, though, if you understand. I mean, like so we're using
predicament
these
that we're
funds here to take care of these projects now, and we're using the other money to kind of like build this nest egg, I guess, to have these funds to have projects down the road when we identify them as they come. I mean,
like, to give an example, we have the slip that we've been fixing at Brickside, which should have been classified as an MS4 and paid out of this fund.
Mm-hmm.
Tom, I believe we're over $400,000 towards that fix already. Is that correct?
No, we spent about $270,000, and that's my memory.
And that's just one problem.
Sure.
Like, there's high price tags to this,
Mhm.
to these projects, and it's just
Well,
not
I
an
think it's
not
our
an easy
responsibility
conversation.
to find these solutions, within our budget and not just pass them off as a fee. I think our constituents expect that of us. And I think if we can find a way to do that, we should. Because I'm not very pleased with having to vote on this in the next meeting. Hopefully, Mr. Stroko can probably, give us a lot of details about what we're going to be voting on, next Thursday?
If not next Thursday, then the meeting after.
Well, I would concur with you. I mean, I think even some of these MS4 projects within the TIF district we can utilize some of the TIF funds, because the TIF is for infrastructure and for economic development in the state of West Virginia. You're not building out for people. You're strictly infrastructure. So I think to that point, and it's a good use for it. If there's separation needs to be done, I think sanitary board's going to do one down at the west end. It's coming up as well next 2 years. And so, I mean, these are the type of the funds they're there for TIF, for infrastructure projects. That's the main reason the state of West Virginia.
Is that in the right end that you were talking about earlier?
Infrastructure's in the TIF.
And so that infrastructure would be like a stormwater sewer separation. You can use TIF funds for that.
You can look at it two different ways. I mean, you have your storm system, you have your sanitary. I mean, you're working on a sanitary, you're putting the storm in. I mean, it still falls under the TIF. I mean,
Right.
and let's face it, we're a class 2 city. Only ones that have to abide by the MS4 is class 1, class 2. So, you're sitting here, no other municipality in the county has to comply to this.
Right.
But all the watershed falls upon the responsibility of Clarksburg. So
It all comes in.
I think going back to what you're saying, I think you said it. I mean, we have to look at, is this something we should have our taxpayers and residents saying, we're going to put it on our backs? I'm not for it. I'll tell you now. But I mean, I think we have to look wider, broader, and reduce the amount we're paying, if anything. Because I can tell you, there's a lot of people going to be upset. They're going to get a rain tax because of separation needs to be done. I don't know. I mean, the watershed's big in the county, and it flows here and through us. So join the fun.
I agree. Everyone who uses the system, pays the fee. I mean, that's just, it's unfortunate, but this is where we're at. We can't afford to kick the can down the road any farther. It's a tough decision. It's not going to make us popular, but we're not here for a popularity contest either. This is what we're here for. We have to make these tough decisions.
And again, and you have to stress this, it's an unfunded mandate by the state of West Virginia.
That part that is a bit frustrating that they put this on cities
they put it on because EPA put it on them.
Yeah.
And they kicked the can down as far as they could.
And it would be nice if there was a match or a percentage sent to anybody that has to participate in this program. And I don't disagree that some of the TIF funds could be used for projects. However, this still needs to be done because eventually this is going to be a problem. Well, it's not eventually, it's a problem. Like
my idea is instead of having customers pay $7 out of their water and sewage bill, maybe pay 70 cents. I mean, that's my idea. And then we can increase it down. And, I don't want to do it either. I mean, I really don't, but obviously we have to.
What's the model of other class 2 and class 1 cities? What are they doing?
It was in that presentation last week.
Oh,
Yeah, so I gave you a copy of that. We basically used the model that they had used with the city that matches our budget and our size. Beckley and Morgantown. But
just for comparison, I would like to see all the other cities' rates that they're charging. I think for us to be able to educate ourselves, see what they're charging.
I can get Tim to hold those together.
Okay.
Yes.
I had a question. So it maybe Tom or or Johnny can answer this. If we had our system, I know our system's like 30%, separated stormwater sewage. If our system was 100% separated, I mean, would that resolve a lot of the issues that we have, or
No.
we just
Because
spend
then you'll have two separate systems, you'll have two separate permits. Because then you'll have a stormwater that then you can't have any CSOs at all overflow.
Right.
So then you would have to have even more of a fund to take care of that stormwater.
Yeah.
And then you would have to have it,
Yeah.
because you'd have two NPDS permits.
So, Drew, correct me, are you saying that we're not striving for 100%? We're just trying to get as much as we can or as much as we
You'll never get
can?
100% in this city.
You don't want 100%.
You don't want it.
No, because then you have two separate permits.
But during these separation projects we're doing now, and remember, we do this, we're putting in new infrastructure for the storm system. Okay? We have storm systems out there now. There are old storm systems that are failing, so you're getting some benefit. And as you asked.
Right.
It's not great, but you are replacing some of the infrastructure, so you are going to avoid some issues that you're going to have down the road by doing the separation. We are replacing platforms, replacing platforms.
Right. Because I mean, I look at it, there's really not a whole lot of benefit to separating it. Then why don't we just invest in building bigger capacity for the sewage treatment plant? I mean, I'm not an engineer or
It's
anything.
gonna cost you more down the road to handle you're just treating rainwater.
Right.
So it's costing you more to treat rainwater. So it's gonna cost you more down the road if you keep it all combined than it would be if you separated it.
Okay.
But I would say it's almost impossible to get 100% in the city.
Right.
We'll probably get close by 2040, but you're never gonna get 100%.
I see 80%.
Yeah,
85%.
you just can't get it all. That's all I'm saying.
And my concern is too, with the stormwater. I mean, there's stormwater system is just going from the parking lot straight to the river or to the water source, right? I mean, it's not going.
Well, there's certain ways you gotta catch the stuff going in.
Really? Okay, yeah. So
There's
that's what I'm
there's
worried
a lot
about.
more to it.
Something like everybody's cigarette butts that get washed down, at a parking lot somewhere is going into the West Fork. Yeah. And if we're gonna get dinged on that.
That's why you have a sweep permit.
Right.
Yeah, and
Okay.
just for context for council in that presentation, like there's a certain part of those costs that staffing has to be paid.
Mhm.
So there's a minimum that has to be raised.
I understand. I mean, and I'm not against it. I'm just saying, we need a better way to do it. A more cheaper or efficient way for our constituents.
And I agree when we presented it last week, the recommendation was only within the city boundaries. But if you're using the system, you should be paying.
And I think we need to clarify only if they use our sanitary
Yes.
system, not people who live up the holler, who are not connected, obviously.
No,
We're not.
exactly. They
they're
need to
not
be
gonna-
connected to the system.
The only way would be if they get a bill from the city for that.
Yes.
I think that needs to be clarified because that seems like that was radio.
Yeah, that, and I found that interesting because our last conversation, we were very clear we were only going to be in the boundaries of the city. So I'm not sure where that idea came from, that we were just going to carte blanche charge everybody for it.
People pick it up and run with it.
So I'm not sure. Tom, did you want to?
If I could, is I think we're getting off base a little bit. Is number one is whenever we start talking about our sanitary sewer system, that goes out into the rest of the county. Our storm sewer system is here in the town. If we start charging for out in the county, then we have to start creating storm sewer systems for those folks out in the county, not just here in the city. So we would have to spend the money we're getting out of town, out of our city limits, out in the other areas. We couldn't just spend it here on what we're doing.
Yeah,
here in
I think that's
Clarksburg.
what council's saying. It's not, they have to be using that system. And if that system only exists in the city, then that's who would be paying the fee.
Our storm drainage system, probably 95, and Johnny, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but 95% of our storm drain system is in the city. We may have small, minute areas on the edge of the city that we're collecting stormwater for. We're not collecting stormwater outside of the city with our storm drain system. We are affected by the West Fork River. We are affected by Elk River and other places like that. But if we start doing that, and Morgantown faced this back years ago when this first started, I think it was 2004 or something, they enacted a fee and they went outside of the city, but then they had to start working outside of the city too. So that became a nightmare for them. And so that's one thing that I know of.
Since it's an unfunded mandate, have we talked to the municipal league? Has there been any action on going after as a group from the cities to go look at the state level? You said EPA.
I think in the beginning people asked
Well,
the
but
state.
the problem is the EPA threatened the DEP that they're going to start getting fined if they didn't enforce it, because the DEP let it go for many years as well.
So if we talk to the municipal league, maybe there's something we can go after the state for help with that. I mean,
I think that's been discussed in and out.
That's what I heard too. It was been
Yeah.
discussed and it was, sorry, this is the mandate, this is the legislation, follow the legislation.
Yeah, it doesn't seem very fair at all. I mean, any unfunded mandate is horrible. Because
If I could just add something, one thing to keep in mind when we're talking about stormwater, the idea and the premise behind the EPA regulations is to keep that stormwater on the parcel, retaining that first inch of rainwater on site so it's not even going into your system. That way you can avoid all the problems with infill and infiltration that's going to naturally happen. So the whole context is to bring our development up to modern standards. So one of the things you guys see going forward, well, you're not gonna see it, you guys see it in this construction, is actually building retention systems into some of our larger sites. There is a method that the city manager has mentioned about having a more egalitarian process where you actually charge based on impervious surface matter. Other jurisdictions that do that, you may only, if you have enough green space to actually capture all of your rainwater, you may not pay anything, or maybe a cent. But if you're something like Walmart, if you're something like in a downtown area, you're gonna be paying a lot because there is no way generally to keep that stormwater on site.
And who enforces that, John? Is that code enforcement? Do we have people go inspecting people's property to measure concrete and, you know?
We actually have that data already.
We have the data from the fire fees for the structures.
Yeah.
I have started looking at what to try to get an idea of what we're looking at totally of the structures plus the impervious area for parking and things like that. And like John said, a Walmart has a huge parking lot, maybe twice or three times the size of their building. So they're going to be paying a lot, whereas we have other people within the corporation that have businesses that have 600 or 800 square feet, and some of them that I've looked at, and I've just started, they don't have hardly any parking at all, maybe for one or two cars, and so there's a big difference. And so, I mean, but this is something I think that we would start with a flat fee and maybe different size businesses that would have a certain flat fee for their size business they have. And then we would go out and or actually probably go on the GIS and measure from our GIS, we could planimeter the size of the impervious area in and around the buildings. And that's what I've started doing, just a few of. But again, just for my 2 cents, we have kicked this can down the road, and so hasn't many other people within the state. It's something that we've known about. We're trying to do with new development. We've done a few stormwater management plans as we've done it. If they have to take it back to at least 10% less than what it is now in new development, or handle the first 1 inch. And there's some issues with West Virginia soils and trying to infiltrate all of that. Normally it's a infiltration, retention combination type thing. But anyway, it's something we need to do. And I talked to Johnny about this when we came in this evening. Our areas that we're having problems with, sinkholes and things like we did on Chestnut and Main Street this week, are just multiplying. We're getting more and more each year. That I've been here for 6.5 years now. We at first, I don't remember any, and now we're having more, so that's something we have to do.
Thank you, Tom.
I think you also gotta remember that the city Clarksburg buildings would also pay the fee, courthouse would have to pay the fee, any government buildings would still also pay the fee.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody is exempt from the fee.
Yep.
I don't know how reassuring that is, but okay.
Anyone else?
That's everything.
That's Anybody, somebody call for adjournment, please?
Move to adjourn.
Got a motion?
Second.
Got a second? All in favor? All opposed? Have a good weekend.